one could argue that the influence of the philosophical notion of the analogia entis, or the chain of being, is in the background of this. In other words, if you were educated in the Greco-Roman world, you would have been familiar with the problem of the chain of being, right? That's what we're talking about. That's the name that we could put on this issue. And how it was dealt with was by bridging the ontological gap. We might say that perhaps some Christian theologians, influenced by that chain of being model, then look at the incarnation as the instantiation of the chain of being, the accuracy, the legitimacy of the chain of being. For instance, I think the last few weeks we were talking about Justin Martyr. I think Justin Martyr's understanding of the incarnation is a subordinationist understanding, because he reads the incarnation through the lens of the chain of being. And that ought to give us pause, when we're doing theology, that we want to be careful that all of our assumptions and presuppositions are being filtered biblically in a sound theological manner, that we're not just bringing things into our theology from the outside, from a secular source, and they're not being examined as to whether they are in fact biblical notions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The solution to this supposed distance in modern theology tends to be, and not just modern, but as Jeff pointed out, older theology as well.
Well, the Greek apologists, yeah. I mean, that's
right.
We're talking 150.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it tends to be kind of this search for a tertium quid of some sort, right? Some sort of a third thing besides the creator and besides the creature that bridges that gap, something that binds them together. There needs to be some sort of a binder that pulls the creator and creature together and forms a gap that sort of crosses Lessing's ugly ditch or something like that. And for Barth, it was always sort of this, what Van Til would call the Geschichte, I call God's time for us, sort of this transcendent realm in which the creator and the creature share in a common bond of actualized grace. And so that becomes, for Barth, and different forms of that, you see it in modern theology, ends up becoming this binder that pulls together the creator and the creature. But see, that's not the point of the Westminster Confession of Faith 7:1 at all. It's not seeking to sort of bridge together some sort of an ontological gap by way of a tertium quid called covenant, right? I mean, that's not what's going on here. Covenant, according to the confession, becomes a way, right? Let me put it to you this way: Westminster Confession of Faith 7:1. The problem isn't God's problem, right? It's not a problem of that God has. Oh my, how am I going to relate to this creation so I'm not sort of a cold abstract being, right? That's not this isn't God's problem. It's our limitation that is in view here, right? We are creatures. We are not great. He is great. We cannot exalt ourselves by virtue of merit or claim into the presence of God to have fellowship with him forever, right? God has to come to us and reveal the way in which we can have him as our blessedness and reward. And as paragraph 2 will go on to say, that the way to have him as our blessedness and reward is by way of perfect obedience, which of course Adam fails, right? And Christ succeeds in.
But which also Adam already owed God by virtue of being a creature. God decided to honor that, and he condescended by saying, okay, if you offer me what you already owe me, then I will bless that and reward that by virtue of giving you a gratuitous blessing and reward.
it's not, as I think is sometimes communicated unintentionally. The covenant of works does not add a layer of works, right? Because Adam
Yes.
already owes perfect, perpetual, and personal obedience to God by virtue of being a creature,
and specifically made in His image. Yeah.
So the covenant of works, and I think this is probably why earlier Reformed theologians did use the language of grace with regard to the covenant of works. It's because it's beneficent, right?
Yes.
It involves God's benevolence, His goodwill. In other words, we may look at it and say, gee, that's unfair. And that's why I've often had to tell folk, remember that Adam and Eve were able to obey God perfectly and perpetually prior to the fall. And that's what makes the fall such a hard thing to grapple with. So the covenant of works doesn't add a layer of works. What it does is it provides a means by which we might have uninterrupted, unalloyed fellowship with God.
And what's striking, Jeff, is that, as you said, that's already there. It's
right.
already what we owe the creator, excuse me.
Right.
And what the creator does by way of condescending to us, right, coming down to us in order to lift us up to himself, in order that we might have eternal fellowship with him, is to say, I will accept what you already owe me as the way of receiving reward. I don't owe it to you. I'm going to give it to you out of, as you said, benevolence, right?
And we can say that the lifting up is not ontological, but ethical or religious, right?
It's a religious exaltation.
It's a relational lifting up, not a fusing of two different, the creator and the creature, right? Which is sometimes, and that gets us into a discussion of the participation.
Sure.
As we've talked about that in the past on the program.
Right.
That's not in view.